Imagine a time when your entire house arrived on a single railroad boxcar with 10,000 pieces of numbered lumber inside. Or when a phrenologist convinced Americans that an 8-sided home was the key to better living. Today, we take a look at 15 house styles that were everywhere, then suddenly vanished. In 1848, a phrenologist named Orson Squire Fowler published a book called The Octagon House, A Home for All. Fowler argued that an 8-sided house enclosed more living space per foot of wall than a rectangle, allowed natural light from every direction, and was cheaper to heat thanks to reduced surface area. The idea caught fire almost immediately. During the 1850s, more than 1,000 octagon houses were built across the Northeast and Midwest, constructed of wood, brick, and in some cases, Fowler's own experimental gravel wall concrete. The 8-sided plan created unusual interior layouts, with rooms radiating from a central staircase and verandas wrapping the perimeter. However, builders quickly discovered that framing 135-degree corners was expensive and that furnishing wedge-shaped rooms was impractical. Fowler's own massive 4-story, 60-room octagon in Fishkill, New York, became known as Fowler's Folly and was demolished in 1897. By the end of the Civil War, the octagon craze had largely burned itself out. The American Foursquare emerged in the 1890s as a direct reaction to the ornate complexity of Queen Anne Victorian homes. Recognizable by its boxy, 2.5-story shape, hipped roof, center dormer, and wide front porch, the Foursquare provided maximum interior space on a narrow city lot. The typical floor plan stacked 4 rooms per floor, with a living room and dining room on one side and a kitchen and entry on the other. Because the design was simple and used standard dimension lumber, it was inexpensive to build and well suited to the new balloon framing techniques. Sears, Roebuck & Company sold Foursquare kits through its Modern Homes catalog, and Frank Lloyd Wright himself designed several variations on the form for his American system-built homes. As economic conditions shifted in the 1930s, the Great Depression made even the modest Foursquare too large and costly for most buyers, and the style faded in favor of smaller, more efficient house types. Large tracts of Foursquares still line the older streets of Midwestern cities today, often identifiable by their distinctive center dormer and wide front stairs. If you walked through an American suburb built between 1900 and 1920, one house you would encounter repeatedly is the Craftsman bungalow. Typically 1 or 1.5 stories with a low-pitched gabled roof, wide overhanging eaves with exposed rafter tails, and a prominent front porch supported by tapered columns resting on stone or brick piers, the Craftsman bungalow was the embodiment of the arts and crafts movement applied to everyday housing. Inside, these homes featured built-in bookcases, window seats, hardwood floors of Douglas fir or oak, and heavy woodwork with a dark stain. The style originated in Southern California, where architects Charles and Henry Green designed landmark examples in Pasadena using teak, mahogany, and hand-rubbed finishes. Pattern books and mail-order catalogs from companies like Aladdin and Sears spread the bungalow nationwide. By the late 1920s, changing tastes and the rise of colonial revival styles pushed the Craftsman bungalow out of production, though thousands still stand in streetcar suburbs across the country. The Sears kit home was not a single style, but an entire catalog of houses shipped by railroad in pre-cut numbered pieces. Between 1908 and 1940, Sears, Roebuck & Company sold an estimated 70,000 to 75,000 homes through its Modern Homes program. The first catalog offered 44 designs, ranging from $360 to $2,890. Each kit arrived in boxcars containing roughly 25 tons of material, including over 10,000 pieces of pre-cut lumber, thousands of cedar shakes, doors, windows, hardware, and even the doorknobs. If you ordered the most expensive model, your kit included built-in china cabinets, mirrored closet doors, and a telephone niche. Sears operated its own lumber mill in Cairo, Illinois, and used balloon framing and pre-cut construction to reduce build time by up to 40%. The company also offered mortgage financing at a time when many banks would not lend to certain buyers. The Great Depression devastated the program, forcing Sears to liquidate $11 million in defaulted mortgages by 1934. The Modern Homes catalog was discontinued after 1940. Before the sprawl of post-war subdivisions, there was the minimal traditional. This small economical house style evolved during the 1930s as a stripped-down version of the Tudor Revival and Colonial Revival homes that had been popular in the previous decade. Typically one story with a low-pitched, gabled or hipped roof, close eaves, and almost no decorative detailing, the minimal traditional was designed to meet Federal Housing Administration standards for insured loans. During World War II, approximately 2.3 million of these houses were built between 1940 and 1945 to shelter relocated defense plant workers. After the war, another 5.1 million were constructed to house returning veterans under the GI Bill. Levittown, New York, one of the most famous planned communities in American history, consisted largely of minimal traditional homes. By the early 1950s, post-war prosperity allowed families to afford the larger ranch house, and the minimal traditional quietly disappeared from builder catalogs. In 1947, Chicago industrialist Carl Strandland founded the Lustron Corporation to solve the post-war housing crisis with an entirely new material, porcelain enameled steel. Each home contained over 3,300 parts, assembled on a concrete slab in roughly 350 man-hours. The exterior came in 4 colors: surf blue, maize yellow, desert tan, and dove gray, and the interior walls, cabinets, and even the ceiling were steel. Pictures could be hung with magnets. If you wanted to redecorate, a damp cloth and some window cleaner were all the maintenance the walls ever needed. Lustron offered 8 models, with the 2-bedroom Westchester Deluxe being the most popular at just over 1,100 square feet. However, the company struggled with production, managing only 26 houses per day instead of the 50 needed to break even. Banks refused to finance steel homes, and costs spiraled beyond control. The Reconstruction Finance Corporation foreclosed on Lustron in 1950 after lending the company over $37 million. Only about 2,680 homes were ever built. An estimated 1,500 still stand today. If you live in a house built between 1910 and 1930 in a small Midwestern town, there is a reasonable chance it came from a catalog, but not from Sears. The Gordon Van Tyne Company of Davenport, Iowa, was one of several competitors in the mail-order home business, selling ready-cut houses alongside millwork, lumber, and building supplies. Their catalogs offered designs similar to Sears, including Foursquares, bungalows, and Colonial Revivals, often at lower prices. Aladdin Homes of Bay City, Michigan, was another major player, claiming to have sold the first kit home by mail in 1906, 2 years before Sears entered the market. Bennett Homes of North Tonawanda, New York, and Montgomery Ward's Wardway Homes rounded out the field. These companies collectively sold tens of thousands of houses across North America. As the Depression tightened credit and World War II restricted building materials, the mail-order home industry collapsed almost entirely by the mid-1940s. One of the most distinctive residential styles of the early 20th century was the prairie house, developed by Frank Lloyd Wright and his contemporaries in the Chicago area beginning around 1900. Prairie houses featured strong horizontal lines, low-pitched hipped roofs with broad overhanging eaves, ribbons of casement windows, and open interior floor plans that broke dramatically with Victorian-era compartmentalization. Wright's Frederick C. DST. Roby House, completed in 1910 in Chicago's Hyde Park neighborhood, is considered the finest example of the style. The exterior used narrow Roman brick laid with deep-raked horizontal mortar joints to emphasize the long, ground-hugging profile. However, prairie houses were architect-designed and expensive to build, which limited their reach to wealthy clients in the upper Midwest. By 1915, Wright had largely moved on to other work, and the Prairie School architects dispersed. The style's influence survived in simplified forms like the Foursquare and the ranch house, but the true prairie house was never built in large numbers. In the late 1920s and 1930s, the streamlined modern style brought the aesthetic of ocean liners and locomotives to residential architecture. These houses featured curved corners, flat roofs, smooth stucco walls, horizontal chrome or steel banding, glass block windows, and porthole-shaped openings. The style rejected all historical ornamentation in favor of sleek, machine-age forms. The design was heavily influenced by the industrial designs of Raymond Loewy and Norman Bell Geddes, who reshaped everything from refrigerators to railroad cars during the same period. Residential examples were most common in Southern California and Florida, where the warm climate suited flat roofs and stucco construction. However, the style was always more popular in commercial buildings, diners, and movie theaters than in private homes. The onset of World War II halted most residential construction, and when building resumed in the late 1940s, the simpler ranch house had captured the public imagination. Before standardized zoning codes reshaped American neighborhoods, the shotgun house was one of the most common dwelling types in the American South. The form is simple and unmistakable: a narrow, rectangular house, 1 room wide and 3 or more rooms deep, with doors at each end aligned so that a bullet could theoretically pass straight through without hitting a wall. Shotgun houses were typically 12 to 15 feet wide and built with their narrow gable end facing the street, allowing multiple homes to fit on a single lot. The style has African and Caribbean roots, arriving in New Orleans through Haitian immigrants in the early 1800s. Constructed of cypress wood and raised on brick piers for ventilation in the humid climate, these houses had no hallway. Each room opened directly into the next. As air conditioning became standard and suburban development offered larger homes, the shotgun house fell out of favor after the 1940s. Today, remaining shotgun houses in cities like New Orleans and Louisville are often recognized as architecturally significant. During the 1920s and early 1930s, the Tudor Revival was one of the most popular residential styles in America. Inspired by medieval English cottages, these homes featured steeply pitched roofs, decorative half-timbering with stucco or brick infill, tall, narrow windows with multi-pane leaded glass, and prominent chimneys. The exterior walls often combined multiple materials, with brick on the first floor and stucco or shingle above, creating a textured, layered appearance. Builders used rolled roofing or heavy slate to mimic the look of a thatched English roof. The style appealed to Americans who romanticized English village life, and entire neighborhoods of Tudor Revival homes went up in suburbs from Long Island to Detroit to Kansas City. However, the Depression severely curtailed the elaborate masonry and custom millwork these houses required. As construction costs became the primary concern for builders and buyers alike in the late 1930s, the Tudor Revival gave way to plainer, more affordable styles. Long before the McMansion, the Italianate was the prestige home of the Victorian era. Popular from the 1840s through the 1880s, the Italianate drew its inspiration from the rural villas of northern Italy, filtered through the pattern books of architect Andrew Jackson Downing. These houses featured low-pitched, hipped roofs, wide, overhanging eaves supported by ornate decorative brackets, tall, narrow windows with arched or hooded crowns, and a sense of balanced, elegant proportion. The brackets, often carved from wood in elaborate scroll patterns, became the signature element of the style. In cities like San Francisco, Brooklyn, and Cincinnati, entire blocks of Italianate row houses were constructed during the 1860s and 70s. The style translated well to both grand freestanding homes and narrow urban facades. As the Queen Anne style rose to dominance in the 1880s with its turrets, wraparound porches, and asymmetrical massing, the more restrained Italianate gradually fell from fashion. If you have ever driven through older neighborhoods in cities like Baltimore, Philadelphia, or Chicago, you have seen thousands of row houses, the once dominant form of urban middle-class housing. Row houses are attached single-family dwellings built in continuous lines, sharing sidewalls with their neighbors. In Baltimore, the typical row house was 2 or 3 stories of brick with a white marble stoop, a flat or low-pitched roof, and a long, narrow floor plan extending back from the street. The form dates to the early 1800s and was the standard method of housing a growing urban population on limited land. Developers could build an entire block at once, reducing material and labor costs. By the early 20th century, Baltimore alone contained over 70,000 row houses. As the automobile-enabled suburban sprawl after World War II, the row house was widely viewed as outdated and undesirable. Entire neighborhoods were demolished during the urban renewal programs of the 1950s and 60s. The Second Empire style takes its name from the reign of Napoleon III in France during the 1850s and 1860s. The defining feature is the mansard roof, a double-sloped roof with a steep lower slope often punctuated by dormer windows and a nearly flat upper slope. This design effectively created a full, usable floor within the roof space, making the attic a proper living level. Second Empire houses typically also featured decorative brackets under the eaves, molded cornices, and elaborate window hoods similar to those on Italianate homes. The style was especially popular for public buildings and grand residences during the 1870s, with notable examples including the Old Executive Office Building in Washington, D.C., and City Hall in Philadelphia. However, the association with government extravagance during the Gilded Age gave the mansard roof a reputation for pretension. As tastes shifted toward the Queen Anne and later the Colonial Revival, the Second Empire style was rarely built after 1890. Today, surviving examples often still feature their original polychrome slate roof tiles in patterns of gray, green, and purple. Before the raised ranch in the split level, there was the Cape Cod Revival. This 1.5-story house with a steep side-gabled roof, center door, symmetrical windows, and minimal ornamentation was modeled directly on the colonial-era cottages of New England. The style was revived in the 1930s by architect Royal Barry Wills, who published influential plan books featuring modernized Cape Cod designs with updated kitchens, bathrooms, and heating systems. The Federal Housing Administration promoted the Cape Cod as an ideal starter home, and builders across the country adopted it during the late 1930s and 1940s. The expandable attic, accessed by a steep staircase, was a major selling point for young families who could finish the second floor as their needs grew. Cape Cod Revivals were built by the thousands in early Levittown and in similar post-war developments. As the ranch house offered single floor living on wider suburban lots in the 1950s, the compact Cape Cod lost its appeal with builders, though it never fully disappeared from the American landscape. So which of these vanished house styles do you wish was still being built today? Drop a comment below to tell us your pick. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and watch the next one right here. And remember to like and subscribe. It really helps a small channel.